chapter 16. We've been talking about the attributes of God, His characteristics, who He is. Tonight, the attribute again is also a name of God. So in Genesis 16, this is a story, and I'm going to read verse 16 verses. Start at verse 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my slave, perhaps I can build a family through her." Abram agreed to do what Sarai said. So after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar and she conceived. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. And Sarai said to Abram, You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between me and you. Your slave is in your hands, Abram said. Do with her whatever you think is best. Then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress Sarai, she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, Go back to your mistress and submit to her. The angel added, I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. The angel of the Lord also said to her, You are now pregnant, you will give birth to a son, you shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man, his hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her, You are the God who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. That is why the well was called Bir Lahai Roi. It is still there between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. Okay. So the story of Sarai and Hagar and Abram. And Hagar comes with this name, this characteristic, this attribute of God, the God who sees. Now, a couple weeks ago, however long ago, we talked about God being omnipresent, where He's everywhere, which kind of is similar, but tonight it's a little different. Because tonight I want to give you some examples of the way that I know, of the way that this speaks to me in my own life and out of my own stuff, okay? So it's going to be a little bit more personally. And I'm going to talk about several areas where I could relate to this, and my guess is that many of us can relate to this, but I'm just going to talk about the ways that I relate to this, personal times in my life where I've dealt with this issue, okay? So the first word I thought of was afflicted, because I was also looking at Hagar. I want to tie it in with the Bible, I just want to talk about myself. But afflicted means dealing with pain or suffering. And it doesn't have to necessarily be physical, although it could be. So I can remember when I was younger than I am now, a lot younger. So my parents got divorced when I was like 5 years old. And I lived with my mom till I was about 10. And then I moved to live with my dad when I was 10. And I can remember I was miserable. My dad had remarried, so I had a step family, and I had a stepbrother who was like the same age as me, so I wasn't, because before that I was kind of like, the closest sibling was like 5 years older than me, so I was kind of, I was kind of spoiled probably, and the baby. And I had this brother, and he was the same age as me, and I hated it, and I felt, I didn't know it then, I wouldn't have been able to put the word for it then because I was only 10 years old, but I felt afflicted. I was dealing with pain and suffering in my mind. And lots of nights, I would just cry. And I can remember I would be crying and I would be talking to God, but I didn't know who God was. Like, I didn't go to church or anything. I just was like, trying something, Sometimes you don't know. So I'd cry and I would just be like, God, I want my mom, When I wrote this down, it didn't seem so hard, like it's going to be hard to say. Anyways, so I did that a lot, like almost every night. It didn't change anything, right? It didn't magically make my situation better. I didn't get my mom because she didn't live in the same area. But in looking back, I know that in my sadness and in my affliction, he was right there with me, even though I didn't know it. You know what I'm saying? Because he's the God who sees. He sees us. Even before we have made a decision to follow him, he sees us. Even before we take the step to invite him to be our Lord and Savior, he sees us where we're at. So it's like sometimes I think, when I was preparing, I used to think like anything before I became a Christian while I was on my own. But I wasn't on my own. God was right there too. Because that's how good he is and that's how much he loves us. See, because he loves us so much that he sent his son to die for us, right? While we were still his enemies, while we did not know him, he sent his son for us. So he's the God who sees even before we see him, which is super cool. I didn't know him, but he was right there with me. And the other part of that is he doesn't see people more or less based on how good of a Christian you are. You know what I'm saying? It's like he doesn't see me like, okay, now I really see you, Dale, because, you're a pastor and all that stuff. Like, back then I saw you because I'm God and I see everything. But now I really see you, like I'm really invested. He sees you the same all the time. So the cool thing was, like when I look at Hagar, she was not an Israelite. She was not part of God's family. She was an Egyptian slave. And she was out by the spring, ran off from her mistress, and guess what? God was right there with her. So, I don't know. When we're afflicted, God sees us. Okay? The second, I was like, okay, this is going to be easy, but it's not really that easy. The second word I have is abandoned. Abandoned. Having been deserted or cast off. Obviously, we can see that in Hagar. As soon as there was some tension between Hagar and Sarai was like, hit the road, right? And abandoned her. So like I said, when I was about 5, my parents got divorced. And at that time, we lived in Wyoming. And there's a lot of bad stuff going on. I don't remember a lot of it. But I stayed with my mom, and my dad moved back to Oregon. And then I moved with my mom, and we moved to Colorado. And I lived there for a while. But my dad left. And I don't know if I knew it at the time. Like, I probably, I didn't, put it together. I was 5. I probably didn't even know what the word meant. But I was abandoned, so to speak. Now, that was a long time ago, and there was about 5 or 6 years there where I can remember my dad came and visited one time. And other than that, I had 0 contact from the time I was 5 till I was 10 with my dad. There was no letter writing. I don't remember ever writing him a letter. I don't remember ever getting a letter. Phone calls back then, there was this thing. There was no cell phones, obviously. We're talking about, the 70s. So there was, regular phones. You guys know what I'm talking about. They're connected to the house. Yeah. Okay, so those phones, if you called somewhere, you had to pay money, big money for long-distance calls. I mean, it wasn't cheap back in the day. So there was no, I couldn't just pick up the phone and talk to him because that would have cost, I don't know. It seemed like $1 million back then, but it was probably 10 cents or something. I don't know. There's no phone calls. Anyways, so I got no contact from my dad until I'm 10. And then when I'm 10, and every year I can remember asking my mom, when it's come summertime, hey, can I go visit? Can I go visit my mom? And I said, no, can't go visit. No, can't go visit. There's always some excuse. And then after my 4th grade year, that summer, she said, okay, you can go visit your dad. And I was like, oh, cool. So I went to go visit, and when I went, I had another stepdad at that point. And when I went to go visit, my mom left my stepdad for another dad that she knew from a long time before, and she moved to Canada. So now I'm back in Oregon visiting my dad. My mom is in Canada. And again, it's not like she emailed me because there was no email. It wasn't like I knew what was going on. It was just like all of a sudden, somebody told me, hey, your mom's, not with that guy anymore, and she's in Canada. And I was like, oh. So this whole abandonment thing comes on again. And then, there's a ton of other stuff. This is obviously just the highlights of my crazy life. I think I started realizing this whole abandonment thing not long ago, actually. But I think part of it, too, like when Rebecca and I were first married and together, Rebecca used to have, well, she still does, but it's under control now, severe asthma, to the point where she would pretty much kind of stop breathing sometimes, and I'd have to take her to the ER, and then she'd spend, like a week in the ER getting back to breathing again. And then I think the first probably 4 or 5 years we were together, that happened probably a couple times a year on average, And I talk about it, and even they talk about it, it's like that was normal life, It would just come on, and she'd go to somebody's house, and they'd have a real Christmas tree, and she's massively allergic to those, and so next thing I know, I'd be getting a phone call from somebody like, hey, you're taking Rebecca to the hospital, or she'd come home not breathing, I'd be like, all right, hop in the car, let's go. And we buzzed to the emergency room, and she wouldn't be breathing. When I say not breathing, kind of turning blue and like that, kind of not breathing. So I'm not exaggerating. But it wasn't intentional, but I think that I just got to this point where I was just waiting to be abandoned. I just figured, well, she's probably going to go die on me. And I wasn't happy about it or anything like that, you guys. It was just I was kind of always to this place of being ready, I'd be thinking, okay, what am I going to do with the girls? How am I going to, function? How am I going to make things work? So there was that. Definitely not her fault at all, so I'm not blaming her. The other stuff, that was their fault. So. But I forgave them a long time ago, it's fine. There's a bunch of other stuff too, just little stuff that's happened along the way with friends or family members where a relationship is just over for one reason or another. And maybe I did something they didn't like, or maybe it was something else, but there's just people that were, part of my life that just gone, not part of my life anymore. And that's, that's weird. And I'm not telling you all this because I don't want you to feel bad for me or anything like that, but I kind of got to this place where I've kind of been at this place in the past where I'm just pretty much waiting for everyone. You guys, I love you guys, but sooner or later you're going to abandon me, and that's fine. And I'm just, I'm okay with that because that's the way it goes in life. Right? No. Wrong. Right. Because Jesus. Right? And I met Jesus, and I realized, wow, He's never going to abandon me. You know what I mean? He's the God who sees all the times that I've been abandoned, and all the times that maybe I just felt abandoned, but wasn't really abandoned because I was being a baby or whatever. He's seen all those times. He's seen the worst in me that if other people saw, they would abandon me a long time ago. He's seen that and still chooses to see me. And I just look at that, and he's not only never going to abandon me, but all those times that I felt abandoned, he was right there with me. I wasn't actually abandoned because Jesus was right there with me. Even the times, like I said, before I knew him, because he's the God who sees, he was right there with me, Hagar was taken as Abram's wife, and then he, basically abandoned her. Sarai says, hey, do this. Abram's like, okay, cool, does it. And then Sarai's like, oh, she's being a jerk to me. And Abram's like, hey, I'm out. Hagar just gets kicked to the curb by both Abram and Sarai and completely abandoned in both ways. But again, God comes to her and is like, I see you. And that's huge. All right. Number 3, attacked. It's getting easier and easier. All right. Attack means to have aggressive action taken against. So, some of you might be a little more familiar with this story. We moved back from California. We went down there. And we moved back up here to start well, we moved back up here to start this church. And so we moved back, and after we moved back, there was some stuff that went on in California. Some bad stuff went down, and people started accusing the leadership down there of being like cult leaders. All right? Like that, the whole thing, the whole church we went to down there was this big cult. And basically, there was a lot of people down there, like we weren't here, so we didn't know all of what was going on, but there was a lot of people down there that, it was very divided at that point. Because there was a bunch of people that were like, this place is a cult, and they were basically like pitchforks and torches type stuff, want to burn this mother down. And I was like, you better not. Anyways, I didn't say that. People were accusing the leadership of being cult leaders, and the whole thing was a cult, and people that were voicing these accusations were people who I thought were friends of mine. So I was kind of like confused, like, well, what's going on? Why is all this going down? I mean, we weren't involved. We had already left, and, in all honesty, I don't feel like I was indoctrinated into a cult. I think if I had been indoctrinated into a cult, I think that I would probably still be part of that, or I would have had to have some kind of weird, intervention to get out of it. I don't know how that works, right? I feel like they taught me a lot about Jesus and pointed me toward Jesus a whole lot. And I know that in my time in California, I grew closer to Jesus than I ever had in my life before that, not even comparable. And I know that it also completely changed me, Rebecca, I know a lot of others. Completely transformation type stuff, not the same as when I went down there. I know that Life Change Church probably wouldn't be here had we not spent time down there. So I kind of go like this. Whether it's a cult or not, I don't know. What I know is I was blind and now I see. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, people who were against what went on down there were basically saying, you got to pick a side. And they were telling me this, you got to pick a side, bro. You either, this was my option. This was literally the option presented to me. Denounce the church and the pastor as a cult, or you're basically part of the cult. That was the options. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not picking a side. I'm not for, I'm not against, I'm not doing that. And then all those people who were, violently opposed, who I thought were my friends, kind of, at that point, either just abandoned me, or started attacking. And there were a few years there where we, Life Change Church, myself personally, Rebecca, Seth got attacked, I've got attacked a few times too. Pretty much anybody that was kind of the leadership at that point, we were being attacked, slandered, maligned, whatever you want to say. On the internet, different places. And there was one person who, specifically, who had also moved back to this area, but he was real anti the cult down there. That was his mission to basically destroy everything that went on down there, and then anything that might have anything to do with anything that might have ever happened down there or any other time. He was hardcore. And he also then decided that he thought it would be a good idea to spread falsehoods about me personally, and he would tell people not to come to church here because we were part of a cult. And then at one point he wrote me a 16-page document, letter. I called it the manifesto. Of all the things that I had done against him, to hurt him. And I've known this guy, we went to school together, high school together, and this was 10 years ago that this happened. So we're talking, we've been out of high school for 20 years, and this guy was bringing up stuff from high school, and I was like, you gotta let it go, man. And it wasn't even true. It was really not good. You know what I'm saying? But in that, even in that, I knew that God is the God who sees. See, unlike the other points where I didn't really know God then, I knew God. And I knew that He saw. And I knew that He saw the whole thing. Like the whole picture. I knew that He saw whatever went on down there that might make people think it was a cult, and whether it really was a cult or not a cult. And He saw me, and He saw this, and He saw all this stuff going on. And He saw the whole big picture. And there were some people that were close to me who wanted to, well, there were some that wanted to fight for me. Like, I think physically, literally, go fight people. It was good, yeah. There was others that wanted to defend me, like go online and like, they can't, you know, because we would read what they'd say, and they were like, they can't say that about you, and they were going to go online and defend me and argue with the people who were posting things on there about me. This was before Facebook, so God is so good because He was like, no. I mean, it was very clear. And I actually told the people, don't do it. Do not go online and start arguing with people. And it was like, that was 10 years ago, people. That's good advice today. You can take that one today. I'll give that one to you today. Don't go online and start arguing with people, okay? And I remember very clearly that I knew God saw what was going on, and that He was my defense, and that He was our defense. And it was like, we don't have to do anything, because we're just going to do what God tells us to do. We're going to listen to God and do what He says, and the fruit's going to show itself. Yeah. And if we're part of a cult and this is all bad, then God's not going to let us succeed, and then we'll know. And if we're not part of a cult, and if this is what He wants to do, then other stuff's going to happen. I knew that He saw everything, and I knew that we could trust in Him, right? See, Hagar was attacked by Sarah. The very person who started this whole business in the first place. She's the one that invited Hagar in, and then she's the one that turned around and just attacked her, just like that. But even in that, God is the God who sees. All right, last one. Apathetic. Showing or feeling no interest, enthusiasm, or concern. Okay? The first three things are things that can happen to us. This one is something that can happen in us. All right? And I think there's times in my life where this comes into play and has come into play, and I think there's probably times where you can relate to this one too. That we kind of get stuck in the mundane, the everyday, day-to-day stuff, right? Everything's going fine. You know, nothing's really going wrong. You know what I'm talking about? But nothing's like super exciting. Everything's just kind of plain. You know, it's like, okay, here's a way you can know. If people ask, hey, how's it going? And you're like, oh, it's going. You're probably stuck in that apathetic kind of thing. And it normally comes right after we've had some time of, I don't know, like a mountaintop experience with God, or a sweet time with God, or something awesome's happened, or something, you know, God spoke something, or He's done something, and we got this awesome thing. It often comes right after that. Because we're not on this emotional high anymore. We're just kind of back to work. And we can kind of go, ugh. And we're just going through, and we want that thing again, but that's not, you know. It's like it's almost like we're jonesing for this next mountaintop experience, the next conference we're going to go to, the next concert, or the next whatever, you know, the next Sunday. You know, the next Sunday you're going to come in here, you're just like, I can't wait to get in there. I got to get some more. No, nobody does that. Okay, just checking. But you know what I mean? It's like we do life waiting for this next thing. And all the while, God's like, I see this time right here. This time right there, right? I'm with you. He sees. And it's like we're just passing time, but God sees us in those times, right? And He's right there with us. And I think for us, it's like, I think it's going to take a perspective change. I know that's what I have to do, right? Like, when I start feeling that way, I have to intentionally be like, okay, God, what are we doing today? What can I see today that you're going to do? And it might be something so small that on any normal day I wouldn't see it, but God will show it to me. It might be something that's like, it doesn't seem like that big a deal to 10 people, but to me, it's like, man, God just spoke that. I tell you, God's been speaking some stuff to me, so, it was in my head, this stuff. I shared a little bit with Rebecca, and I was like, yeah, it was good, and I was like, And then last Sunday, another church was having this, a revival, this like church meeting thing, and so I decided to go and check it out, just to kind of, I like to go and listen to people talk and stuff too, so, and I thought, I'll just sneak in and I'll just be a normal person, right? But that didn't actually work out very well, because the pastor knew me. He's like, Pastor Dale from Life Change Church, and I was like, thanks. Pastor Dale, come up to pray for these people. I'm like, thanks, appreciate that. It was good though. But the whole thing was, the guy was teaching, and it was great. It was biblically sound. The guy was talking about stuff, and it didn't really apply to where I was at in my life. So I was kind of like, okay, God, I felt like I got this, I don't know, prompting from you, and I talked to Rebecca about it, and I'm just like, now what? What do I do? And then this guy says one line. I'm there 2 hours. The guy says one line, one sentence, and God was like, that was for you. And I was like, And it's like we can get that every day. Every day, we just keep our eyes open, and God will speak to you. I believe that He wants to talk to you. He doesn't just want to talk to us on Sundays and Wednesdays, or when we go to some conference or some concert or some big event. He wants to talk to us every single day. And we'll just keep our ears open because He's right there, because He sees our hearts, and He sees our desires, and He sees our wants. And when we just are looking to hear His voice, He will talk to us. He will put like a sunset or whatever you like. He'll put that there. Who was I talking to about this? Oh man, I can't remember. Somebody was just telling me God does these little things for them. You? Was that you just talking? Yeah. You were just talking about that, sorry. Yeah, the winning stuff, one little thing that, it's not that big a deal. And then it's like, man, God does that and speaks to you. If you have ears open, now a lot of people will be like, oh, well, you went on the fortune thing, and then you seem like a energetic person, and, well, sure, they're going to call you back. But for you, that's God speaking to you, And it's little stuff like that. Doesn't have to be great big things. It just has to be us having our ears open to hear what it is that God is speaking to us, right? Here's what I want to encourage you with, though. When something big happens and then you just go back to normal, God's still right there. Don't beat yourself. Don't be like, oh, I'm in that mundane. Oh, I'm in the normal. Oh, I got to get out of that. Ooh. No. He sees, even in that. He sees you right there. Hagar takes off and she's at the spring. She's just sitting there. And the angel of the Lord sees her and comes to her and is like, hey, what are you doing? I'm running. Like, no, go back. Go back in. It'll be good. You'll be fine. Bottom line is this: God sees. He sees you right where you are. He sees you in the good times. He sees you in the bad times. He sees you when you've been attacked. He sees you when you've been abandoned. He sees you when you've been afflicted. He sees you when you're apathetic. He sees you when you've been abused. He sees you on all the other A words that you can think of, because there's a lot. Because I could go on and on. He sees you in all those, right? Even in the times where you don't think He sees, or you don't feel like He sees, He sees. Because He is the God who sees. Right? And He loves you. Right where you're at. And I think it's so important in this society we live in, where we're all super connected, right? More connected than we've ever been, except we have more loneliness now than we've ever had in our lives. Which is so crazy, right? Everybody's all connected on social media now. Everybody's way more lonely than they ever were, because you're not actually talking to anybody. In that loneliness, in that aloneness, God sees and He's right there with you. And He loves you. You're never alone. All right? Let's pray. God, you're good to us. Thank you that you are. Thank you that you see me, that you see each one of us, and that, Lord, you love us, and that you... It's not like you're just standing back waiting for us to get our crap together or anything like that. You are just with us, and you love us, and you want to encourage us, you want to lead us, and you want to guide us, you want to show us, and you want all this stuff, God, and we just need to be those who are open to hear your voice. We just need to be those who keep our eyes open to see what it is that you want us to see. God, I know that you want to speak to each of us on a much more regular basis than you do now. And not necessarily say an audible voice, but I know that you put things in our life, you put things in our path to show yourself to us all the time. And I think sometimes we just miss them. So God, I pray for each person in this room that tonight you would open their eyes, that you would open their ears, that you would open their hearts more than they already are. And that God, as they leave this place, they will see you. They will hear you. They will listen to you. And God, you will show them more and more just how much you love them. Lord, we know that wherever we are at, you see us. And we are thankful for that. In Jesus' name, amen.